spring has finally sprung. And you know what? A little birdie told me that we'll actually be having pretty spectacular weather the first few weeks of spring. Hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Go. I'm your host, Christina Jung. Now, I know spring is a busy time and an exciting time for most of the gardeners here in the Cariboo. So with that said, I caught up with Pat Rodola, the vice president from the Williams Lake Garden Club, to find out some tips and tricks on how we can get our soil prepared for the gardening season. On this episode of Go, we wrap it out with music artist Dirty Fraser. Use this beat to tell you a little more about me and who it is you're listening to. Find out how to prepare our gardens for spring and learn how to cook with Walt. That's all coming up on this week's episode of Go.
Hi, my name is Pat, and I am vice president of the Williams Lake Garden Club. And since spring has sprung, I'm here on Shaw TV to show you how to get your vegetable garden started. Let's go. So we have an 8x8 area of the garden here that we are going to prepare. And the first thing we're going to do is apply compost to this part of the garden. Okay, so this is our compost bin. We put grass clipping, kitchen waste, that type of thing in here. I've emptied out the unprocessed stuff, and down at the bottom of the bin, as you can see, we have some beautiful black compost in here. But what I need to do is screen it first. So what I have done is built a little screen here, and I screen it on top of my wheelbarrow. And the leftover, the stuff that's too coarse, gets put back on this pile and then shoveled back into the bin later on. Okay, so I go like this. Move it around. Lots of nitrogen. Slow release nitrogen. It also holds the water when you're, during the summer periods. It'll hold water so that your plants will have it'll help keep your plants, give your plants a steady supply of water. And as you see here, we've got beautiful compost.
So while Pat gets all the compost ready for gardening, I'm thinking our next story could give you some inspiration and ideas on what you can make for dinner this week.
So what I'm going to do now is just shovel it out and kind of spread it out onto the soil. Okay, and I was fortunate, a friend of mine raises sheep, and she gave me some composted sheep manure. Throw that on top. So it looks like we have about a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch on there. And the next step is to turn it into the soil.
Wow, gardening is so much tougher than it looks. But if you want your flowers to bloom, you gotta put in the work. Am I right or am I right? Speaking of blooming flowers, our next story is featuring an up-and-coming rap artist who makes sure he always has time for his music. Dirty Fraser's music can be found online, so make sure you check out some of his tunes. We'll be back with more gardening tips from Pat, but first check out what's happening here in the Cariboo. Welcome back and thanks for joining us. Now, spring has finally come, so for today's episode, we checked out the Williams Lake Garden Club to figure out how we can prepare our soil for the upcoming gardening season. Now, so far, we've talked about composting and the importance of spreading it out evenly so that the soil can have its moisture for the hot summer Cariboo months. Now, before we get back to Pat, let's check out our next story and find out what Mary Forbes found in another secret compartment at the potato house.
So the tool I have here is called a broad fork, and at one time I considered purchasing a rototiller, but I thought my garden was a little bit too small for that, and just the maintenance on the rototiller and stuff I thought would be kind of prohibitive. So I did some reading and I found out that this was a really good tool to use. It does a great job aerating the soil. It doesn't pulverize the soil like rototilling does, and it's perfect for a garden of this size, or maybe a garden that's quite a bit bigger than this also. But your soil has to be pretty good in order to use this tool here. So it's a very easy tool to use, and the next step is to show you how to do that. So generally you're not supposed to walk in your raised beds, but by the time I'm finished with this, the soil will be fine. It's not going to be compacted at all. So what I do, put the broad fork into the soil, tilt it forward, tilt it back, and a lot of the compost is now going down deeper into the soil because of the tines on here. Move back 6 inches, do the same thing. So as you can see, there's you can see the compost being filtered down into the soil for the length of the tines on here, and it's also doing a great job aerating the soil, but it's not pulverizing the soil. And this is going to help make a great bed for the vegetables I'll be growing. So my 8 by 8 section of garden there is being broad forked. So it's you let it sit for a couple of weeks and you're almost ready for planting.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I sure learned a lot from the Williams Lake Garden Club this episode. Well, that just about wraps up this edition of Go. Thank you everyone for joining me. And of course, we're always looking for story ideas and suggestions, so don't forget to tweet, Facebook, or even send me an email. And if you're interested in volunteering or seeing how all of this is made, don't forget to contact us right here. Now, Pat and the Williams Lake Garden Club has one last tip for you, but of course, I'll see you back here next week. Go ahead.
We'll be doing our planting in here in a few weeks, and you'll want to, before you put your plants in, to do a nice light fertilization of the bed. You can use fish fertilizer. You can put another layer of compost in. Depending on your crop, like if you have deep-rooted crops like cauliflower or broccoli, you probably want to go a little deeper than you would for lettuce and spinach, for example. So, but it's important to put another light layer of fertilizer on here when planting time comes.
Okay, wait, Pat, don't close the show off yet. We have to tell people about our Thursday, April 7th Garden Club meeting, Central Cariboo Arts Center. And it starts promptly at 7 o'clock. Memberships are available. We've got a guest speaker coming in, Daryl Grams. He's going to talk about xeriscaping. And that's how to find plants that require little water. And it'll be very exciting. We're also going to have a quick little segment that Pat will do on vegetable choices for small spaces like he showed you today. Also coming up in July is the garden tour. Jerry Giebrick is organizing that, and it'll be a full day of visiting gardens in the Williams Lake area.